Welcome to the Modise Network. Like many nations around the world, South Africa may be odd and interesting at times as we alternate between fits of national euphoria and depression. And this happens because we have huge expectations of ourselves and do get disappointed when these expectations are not met. We are a proud people, and it is this sense of significance in the world that begs the question, are we justified in our pride? Events in South Africa are followed around the world because of the role the country plays and the partnerships we have across the globe. And we've had a fair share of troubles in recent times. We'll be finding out how the world perceives South Africa through the eyes of Andrew Harding, BBC correspondent based here in South Africa, and Moeng, the MD of DonValley Reputation Management and Columnist. They'll be asking and answering this question: can South Africa improve its image following its troubled experience? And later on the show, Associate Professor at the Wits School of Governance, Ivo Sarakinski, who says political parties who wish to govern need not necessarily be homogeneous, but that they must at least present a coherent vision and policy offering. We'll be looking at the recent increase in the number of service delivery protests around the country and asking what impact these protests will be having on the election campaigns of the different parties. Join us in a moment. But first, I'm joined by my two guests, Andrew Harding, BBC correspondent. He's based here in South Africa, and Moeng, MD of DonValley Reputation Management and Columnist. And gentlemen, welcome. Pleasure to have you with us on the program. And to our viewers, I'm inviting you to be part of this conversation, putting your comments on Twitter using the hashtag the Modise Network. Now, we are in election mode here in South Africa at this time, Andrew, and a lot of things are coming up. We've got service delivery protests all over the place. We've got the commissions of inquiry. We've got people rooting for one candidate, particularly the leader of the ANC and president of the country, Cyril Ramaphosa, who's facing his own in-house problems within the ANC. A lot of stuff that's going on in South Africa, and we can go back to 1994, that in 94, we seem to be clear about what the vote was for. It was for change and was for bringing about democracy. This time around, issues are many, varied and confusing. As an international correspondent, how does South Africa look to you and your audiences? What do they think of us today?
I suppose the staggering thing, first of all, is that we're still not talking about the ANC losing power after a decade of, as is generally admitted, pretty serious missteps by the governing party. We are still assuming a comfortable victory, and we are still looking to the next election or the one after that for South Africa to do what, you know, every other country on the continent eventually gets to in this post-liberation phase of kicking out the Liberation Party and ushering in what I would say is the true multi-party democracy era, when any party is potentially able to secure power. So it is remarkable that we're still there, and remarkable that South Africans still are so conservative and respectful of their party of liberation that they are still prepared to give it the benefit of the doubt.
But is it not maybe the case that the Constitution is robust and that, you know, it has not been tampered with to the extent that that it could have upset the people to say, let's kick out the party, compared to what may have happened elsewhere, particularly on the African continent?
Is it about the Constitution, or is it about this momentum that South Africa still has from '94 that doesn't often seem reflected in the media these days, which is overwhelmingly negative? But when you see opinion polls, black South Africans are still optimistic about the future. There is still that hope that tomorrow will be better, and therefore, because of that conservatism that I sort of sense here, you know, the EFF may get a lot of coverage, but it's still got a tiny fraction of the vote here, that people are still ready to give the governing party the benefit of the doubt.
And Solly, how do you see the whole scenario unfolding in South Africa? Because for those who know how change occurred 1994 to now, it feels like a momentous occasion, but very different to what happened in 94 to 2019.
Look, Tim, the only other time when South Africa was governed by somebody else other than the ANC, it was a really horrific place to be for black people. So we've never tried anything outside apartheid other than the ANC. And a lot of people get frightened by the lies that apartheid might return if, for instance, a party like the DA comes into power. All the post-apartheid gains would be taken away. You know, government grants would go away. The BE, affirmative action policies would go away. A lot of people are seriously fearful of that. But we started the new democracy with a robust constitution, Bill of Rights. We had a dream. We said this is a country we're going to be going forward. And Mandela was very good at leading that dream. All brands and countries and brands are led by leaders who have to be credible, consistent, and who have to have the empathy that is required, especially to lead a country as diverse as ours. Mandela was good at that. He was good at saying, forget the differences. We have a dream. We have a country to build together. And I think the leaders that came after Mandela, even though they had other things to emphasize their policies on, they didn't continue the dream. They didn't continue saying, whatever happens, we have to build this country together. And this is where we've gone wrong. So suddenly the fissures that have been existing between races have been made deeper. I mean, the existence of Zuma and Belt Pottinger in South Africa. So we're at a place where levels of distrust have deepened. And parties like the BLF and the EFF are benefiting from that, which is really, really sad.
But now, at that time, when you go back, we go back to the 90s. I mean, the world hailed South Africa as a miracle nation. Archbishop Tutu called us the Rainbow Nation, and everybody embraced that. There was very exuberant optimism at that time that somehow, notwithstanding the horrors of apartheid, that South Africans were going to get their act together. The country's economy was going to grow. We're going to get along. We're going to achieve everything. But, you know, the past decade or so, things went awry. So has the world perception or view of South Africa changed as a result of that?
Sure, of course it has. The only news that comes out of South Africa at the moment has been about Zuma, about the corruption, about the Guptas. The world has a lot of other things to focus on right now. Yeah. My country, not least, of Britain. And so South Africa doesn't get the wall-to-wall coverage it once did. And I think there's still a lingering sense of the Rainbow Nation that we cling on to in the West, perhaps more than South Africa does in some ways. So there's still an enormous amount of goodwill towards South Africa, but there is less day-to-day coverage, and therefore when the coverage merits it, it tends to be because of bad things. So I would say that, combined with, for instance, the visa situation, that catastrophe that still goes on. A couple of weeks ago, some friends of mine visiting from Cairo got turned away at the airport because their two children, they didn't have their unabridged birth certificates, and despite the kind of confusion and attempts to change that, it's still a problem. And that kind of thing has a huge impact
but
as
you
well
know,
on perceptions.
And I'm asking the question because for veteran journalists like yourself, you look at the unfolding situation in South Africa and you start making comparisons, I suspect, and you say, you know, the Zimbabweans at some point were very optimistic themselves and things went wrong for them. And there are experiences elsewhere on the continent, worse situations than what we're in South Africa with the outbreak of civil war and so forth. But is that the view in the world, that South Africa is going the wrong way and may become a failed state? Let me just put it straight like that.
I don't think it's just abroad. I mean, South Africans talk about that as well, you know, that apocalyptic view. And having spent nearly 30 years running around mostly war zones and having seen a lot of apparently stable or reasonably stable countries self-destruct very quickly, you become quite, on the one hand, quite gloomy about how quickly things can turn for the worse and for the better. But at the same time, one tries to kind of hold that apocalyptic perspective at arm's length, because it's not always the case. And I think it is dangerous to see a country like South Africa as having to be either Norway or Zimbabwe, that it's a binary choice. The problem with South Africa is that it's such a lovely country to live in, it's got such energy, it's got so many things going right for it, that it can blind you sometimes, particularly if you live in a nice suburb and go to nice shopping centres. It can blind you as a journalist or just as an ordinary citizen to the dangerous undercurrents that are there and the things that really are going wrong.
Now, the trajectory that we're on, Soli, what do you think? I mean, we all, being South Africans, want to be optimistic. We are still dreaming of the South Africa that is the miracle rainbow nation that is successful, and we brag about our constitution, and we believe that the aspirations enshrined in the constitution somehow will and can be achieved. But the experiences that we have now are telling us a different story.
Yeah, you know, I wish I could take Ramaphosa out of the ANC and get him to form his own political party, because it seems like if he were freed from the kind of environment he's having to operate in now, he would make a better leader for South Africa, the kind of leader that this country needs. First of all, we didn't sign up to be a one-party state forever. If you put any democracy in the same political formation for too long, you end up with what we have in South Africa: huge levels of arrogance, impunity. People know, and there are ministers we don't read about in the papers who over the years have done some things that they would have been fired for in other countries, but they're still sitting there. So people think they can do wrong, nothing will happen to them. The justice system has been damaged, they're still sitting there. So our dream has been deferred. This is not 25 years after 1994. This is not where we hoped we would be. I think it will take a really strong leader. And I don't think that the ANC, as the leader of society that it has been up to now, more or less, is the party that has what it takes to take South Africa forward. Because there are too many people who are compromised, who will make sure that the institutions that we have that need to be strengthened will not get the kind of strength they need.
What do you think lies behind the confidence that people still place in the ANC, the fact that they still believe that, notwithstanding what they know or have experienced, that the ANC, from what Andrew is telling us, and I suppose you're saying this from having traveled around the country and trying to get a sense of the black community in particular, that they still have confidence in the ANC?
Well, like I said earlier, the other time South Africa was not governed by the ANC, it was a horrible place. It was really, really, really bad. Those of us who grew up under apartheid know that. If I were to be asked to choose between going back to apartheid and the ANC as it is now, I'll choose the ANC. There's no doubt about it. I would never want to return to apartheid. So it is a pity that we haven't had an opportunity in South Africa to have South Africa being governed by somebody else. And I think South Africans need to grow up. They need to have confidence that the constitution, the justice system we have, it has been working a lot more than some of the few failed state-owned entities. We still have what it takes to rebuild, to strengthen our economic, our political democracy, to get to where we're supposed to go. But all brands are led by somebody. You need a credible leader who has all the qualities: emotional intelligence, empathy, balance, etc. Not somebody who gets angry. So not somebody who thinks everything must be done their way all the time. Because we are a very diverse country. South Africa will always have Indians, colors, white, and black people living in it. There's no way that any of these people, despite the departures we've seen in recent years, that all of them will go away. So we have. If you want to lead a country like South Africa, you have to accept, first of all, that we all belong. And the Constitution says so. The minute you come in there with an attitude that says black people are holier than everybody else, you're not the right person for this country. And anybody, even if it's a leader of the ANC, Mr. Ramaphosa, at the present moment, the poor man has to wake up every morning thinking, am I wearing my ANC hat today or my South Africa hat today? Sometimes I get worried that he puts on his ANC hat a lot more than he puts his South Africa hat. And he needs to put the South Africa hat more, because South Africans are looking for a leader. All South Africans, not just ANC people. All of us are looking for somebody to say, guys, despite everything, I'm here to build for you. And that's why I think maybe we need a president who doesn't have to belong to a political party at the same time. We need a president who looks not to a party manifesto, but to the Constitution.
You need the Queen.
Yeah, we need somebody who looks for all of us, not just one portion of the country. And that's what we lack.
Well, let's pick this conversation up in a short while. My guests, Andrew Harding, as well as Moeng, and we're discussing the situation in South Africa today, particularly from the global perspective, and of course, Soli giving us the sense of how South Africans themselves see the picture and what we could do better going forward. We welcome your comments, and the hashtag is the Modise Network. Don't go away.